Coming up on Transformers University, we are diving back into the Marvel US run with a small detour to Marvel UK. We'll talk some changes at Marvel. We'll talk about Blaster, Grimlock, a bunch of little kids, and a teddy bear. That's right now on Transformers University. Hello, my friend, and welcome to Transformers University. I am your host, Anthony Brucali, owner, operator, admin behind TFU.INFO, the website, the toy archive, this podcast, and of course, TFU News and Views podcast. And I know it has been a while, and I am glad to be back. The short story of this, of course, is if you haven't heard on I think I've mentioned it on this podcast, I've certainly mentioned it on Twitter, and I've definitely mentioned it on TFU News and Views. I moved, and I moved a pretty sizable distance, a little over 1,000 miles, and I didn't realize how much goes into moving. Not even the move itself, but life after the move, the unpacking, the making someone else's house that you just bought into your own. So I don't want to make excuses for why university has been so delayed. I think the Earthrise episodes, and I hope you caught the Earthrise episodes over on the TFU News and Views feed, and I think I put them here as well. And I hope you did give those a listen, because it was fun to finally just be on a podcast again. Also check out Transmissions. They had me on for their Earthrise coverage as well. So if you missed me, I was over there for about an hour and on a special episode there. And in addition to Transmissions, you can catch my thoughts on Siege and the Earthrise trailers over on my friend Seth Everett's podcast, Hall of Justice, everywhere you listen to this show. And I am just glad to be back and doing this episode. And I have a couple of things banked up. I promise I am going to have more than this episode coming as we move forward. Now, the funny thing is, this is episode 96, and we're going to talk Marvel US Comics 32 through 36. And I started looking at my notes last night, and I realized I did these notes back in October, I think. So they were a little confusing to me. So strap in, boys and girls, because I may not know what I'm talking about in this episode, because I might not understand what I told myself to tell you back in October of 2020. But we're going to kick off this episode with Marvel Comics issue number 32, entitled Used Autobots, written by Bob Budiansky, pencils by Don Perlin, inks by Akins and Garvey. Letters, we got a new person here, and that is Pat Brosseau, and we'll talk about him in just a second. Colors, once again, by Nel Yomtov. Edits by Don Daly, and of course the cover by Frank Springer features the Protectobots and the Combaticons fighting at a used car lot. Now, Pat Brosseau, a longtime letterer for Marvel, Dark Horse, DC, and Image. He is now a freelance letterer, and you can catch him on Twitter at Droog811. That's DROOG811. He has some t-shirts for sale at soundfxstudio.com, and notable books he has lettered on include Uncanny X-Men number 266, the first appearance of Gambit. He was the main letterer on the solo books for Wolverine and Doctor Strange back in the 90s. He lettered Steel issues 1 through 40 for DC Comics, as well as Legionnaires, and is currently the letterer on Wonder Woman. Now, this issue appeared in Marvel UK issues number 139 and 140. Issue number 139, they both feature actually different covers than what appeared in the US. That's usually fairly uncommon for the UK books. So issue 139 features Blaster on the cover riding a pair of Throttlebots, Rollbar, and Chase, basically doing his best Vehicle Voltron impression. It's actually a pretty neat cover, and that one is by Robin Smith. Issue 140 features Swindle on the cover, trying to place a bid on the car auction. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, let's get into the story of used Autobots. Now, this issue starts with the Throttlebots and Blaster getting attacked by Vortex, and Blaster transforms to fight him off, and he does this by being way out of scale and riding the backs of the Throttlebots, much like the cover of that UK book. Rollbar is badly damaged in the fight. The Autobots stop at a Blackrock station for gas, but get attacked by Rat. Now, my notes from October say for me to note the word bubbles. So let's a little inside baseball here. Let's note the word bubbles. So Goldbug's reaction to the rat attack is that it's a rat trap.
We're all gonna die.
And Blaster responding to this, knowing that that we're all gonna die. He says that Rat's driven into a dead end, but it's Rat with 2 T's. Now, another thing to note here is this Rat vehicle is designed pretty much like a G.I. Joe reject vehicle. It's part plane, part tank. Anyway, Rat attacks Blaster and exposes some gasoline at the gas station. Blaster shields the Rat soldier from the explosion. The Autobots then flee during the confusion. Back at the Ark, Grimlock, just not happy with Goldbug and Blaster for not having returned yet, and sends the Protectobots to find them. The Throttlebots, along with Blaster, park at Big Steve's used car lot to take a rest. And if you haven't seen this plot before, then you haven't been listening to this show. They end up a lot parking at used car lots, don't they? The Transformers in the 80s. Well, the next morning, the police are there questioning Big Steve about potential weird vehicles in the area. Steve shoos off the cops because he's busy ripping off his customers, and then one of Steve's workers, a guy by the name of Clifford, finds Blaster and the Throttlebots and tells Steve. Steve checks out the new cars and says to junk the Jeep, aka Rollbar. The Throttlebots then transform and strike a deal with Steve to be left alone until nightfall. Steve checks the police list and realizes that they all match the vehicles that are the Throttlebots. And it's neat here because it actually breaks down what the Throttlebots are. A red Ferrari, a blue Corvette, a gold VW Bug, a green Jeep, a white Ford RS200, which is Searchlight, and an orange dump truck. And there is a $50,000 reward per vehicle. So Steve, what does he do? He sends Clifford to pick up some soda. He wants a lot of soda. Cases, sugared, no diet stuff. Because Steve is going to put sugar in the Autobots' gas tanks. And after he does that, Rat arrives and the Throttlebots' engines are locked up because Steve put sugar in their gas tanks. Along with Rat, the Combaticons arrive, and so do the Protectobots. We have the end of Reservoir Dogs here, ladies and gentlemen. And Steve is not wanting his lot to be destroyed, so he offers to auction off the Throttlebots. But before the auction can begin, Swindle, hiding, decides Big Steve should hit the Buy It Now button and takes aim at him. Blaster transforms and stops him, and the battle then ensues. Rat flees, and Barnett, you might remember him, he gave the big check to Donnie Finkelberg, gives Steve a big check. We find out Big Steve's full name is Steve Ludwig. And as the Combaticons and Protectobots fight it out, Rat steals the Throttlebots. Blaster helps turn the tide of the battle, and the Combaticons flee. Big Steve, he's eyeing his check. It's $300,000, and Blaster shoots it with his Electro Scrambler rifle, and it crumbles. He will not let Steve profit off his friends. The Protectobots then arrest Blaster and plan to return him to the Ark for, quote, trial and execution. I'm going to say that again. Trial and execution. What? And hashtag APAB. That is issue 32. And now this story is going to get put on pause for a second because we're going to go with issue 33, which is the first time a Marvel UK story gets published in the United States. And that is Man of Iron, which we've covered way back in the beginning episodes of this series, back in episode 16. So 80 episodes ago, we covered Man of Iron. This was part 1, so issues 1 and 2 from the UK. It features a new cover by Charles Vess. He was the artist on Stardust with Neil Gaiman. And the cover has kind of got this weird, like, safety Megatron going on it. And in the corner, there's a Union Jack, British flag behind Grimlock. And then we won't recap the story. I'm just going to tell you about the artwork on the covers, because issue 34, Man of Iron Part 2, features a cover by Tom Morgan, who was the inker back on Transformers, Marvel Transformers, issue number 16. And inks on this cover by Aiken and Garvey feature Optimus being attacked by a jet in front of a castle. Now, the reason these two stories were published, or at least part of the reason I can use from these stories being published in the US, and why we stopped in the middle of the action between used Autobots and the next story we will get into, is that Marvel had a big leadership change in their bullpen. Jim Shooter, the editor-in-chief, one of the co-creators behind the Transformers brand, was let go by Marvel, and Tom DeFalco was brought in. Now, in my research, Jim Galton, the publisher of Marvel at the time, he was grooming Tom DeFalco as a replacement, and included even sending DeFalco to England for a few months to make sure he didn't quit Marvel while he took care of letting go of Jim Shooter. And there you have it. That's why you get two Marvel UK issues in the US in the middle of a story between issues 32 and then what we'll talk about right now, issue number 35.
Hey, want to help out this podcast or the website TFU.INFO? There's a number of ways you can do it. Let me tell you how. You can help us directly by joining our Patreon and enrolling as a student at Transformers University. There, you'll get early access to the podcast as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes peeks and perks for as little as $1 a month. Sign up is quick and easy. Just swing on by to www.patreon.com/TFU.INFO. Another way you can help us is by using our Amazon link, www.tfu.info/Amazon. Type that into your browser whenever you want to shop at Amazon, and a portion of what you spend will be contributed back to us. It's that easy. Finally, you don't become the world's longest running transforming toy archive without some help from other fans. We're always on the hunt for photos of figures and accessories we're missing from our pages. If you'd like to contribute, go to tfu.info/help for a list of what we need, or send an email to info@tfu.info. tfu.info, the Alpha Trion and Omega Prime of transforming toys. Now, back to the show.
Now, issue number 35, entitled Child's Play.
Hi, I like to be hugged.
Written by Bob Budiansky. Pencils by Don Perlin, inks by Akins and Garvey, colors once again by Nel Yomtov. Letters, we got another newbie here, Jack Morelli, and we'll get to him in just a moment. Edits by Don Daly, and of course, the new editor-in-chief, Tom DeFalco. Cover features Bruticus and Defensor fighting in a rail yard, and that one once again by Frank Springer. Jack Morelli, occasionally credited as John Morelli, has done a little bit of everything, but mostly he's a letterer historically for Marvel and DC. Now, once again, the UK covers for this, issues numbers 141 and 142, are different from the US version. Issue 141 features Brawl in vehicle mode saying knock knock and basically blasting his way through the page. It's a pretty neat cover, and it's always nice to see a non-main character on the front. Issue 141, cover by Lee Sullivan. The cover for issue 142 features a cover very similar to the U.S. one. The U.S. one, as I mentioned, it's Bruticus and Defensor fighting in a rail yard, and Bruticus is whipping Defensor with a train. They're both in like these, solid colors. Defensor is all red, Bruticus is all blue. In the UK one, it's the same thing, sort of. It's a different piece of art entirely, but it has Bruticus whipping Defensor with a train, and they're in full color, and Defensor is on the ground. And actually, the U.S. one's probably a nicer looking cover. This one here by Dan Reed and Robin Botel. This is the first time we're actually talking about Dan Reed on this show, I think, and we won't encounter him in the Marvel UK run until issue 119, so that's before this in the run, but we haven't covered those issues just yet. But oddly enough, we will be getting to those in our next Marvel UK story arc. So I will save Dan Reed for that time when we're talking about books he actually penciled. So this issue starts with a little boy getting shot on the splash page. And actually, he's just pretend shot. So it's actually 3 boys, a girl, and a teddy bear. And they're playing in a rail yard. This is pretty much the epitome of being a latchkey kid. I don't think anyone would understand it unless you grew up in the 80s, but that was really what it was like. We have 3 boys. Sammy, who just got shot, and he likes to overact. We have Alan, Allan, who loves to argue with Sammy. We have Jed, the older brother of Robin, the kid's sister.
Kid sister, kid sister, kid sister. Wherever I go, you're gonna go. Kid sister, kid sister, kid sister, kid sister, and me.
And her teddy bear, Daisy. Now, neat thing in this book that I really, really like is that Don Perlin gives Daisy, the teddy bear, expressions that fit the scene. So, whereas we'll see Daisy in future issues and she's just an inanimate teddy bear, she very much understands what's going on in this issue. And the Protectobots, they pass through this rail yard and get radioed by Wheeljack at the Ark. Grimlock butts into the radio call and yells at them to bring Blaster in. He also wants the Ark's repairs finished ASAP. Blades up in the air spots tank tread tracks and knows somehow that they're Decepticon tracks. I don't know how to explain that. It just is. Accept it and move on. Hotspot knows that they're brawls and orders Groove to drop the prisoner, Blaster, in a safe place. He places him in a drain pipe. Blaster has been in alt mode and is locked in that mode. And the kids see Groove driving around in his motorcycle mode without a driver and go to investigate. Just then, the Combaticons attack. Sammy finds Blaster in that drain pipe and they hear an explosion. Blaster asks him to remove the lock that is on him. The kids argue because they think Sammy's making all this up, but then Robin and Daisy find Blaster. The fight out in the yard continues, and the Protectobots combine into Defensor, and the Combaticons combine into Bruticus, just like on the cover. Back at the Ark, Grimlock has Beachcomber and Cosmos making a torture device for Blaster. Couldn't pick 2 worse Autobots to make a torture device. And the Ark is ready, and Grimlock demands that it blast off. Back at the rail yard, Blaster convinces the kids to remove that lock and then transforms. He saves the kids from a falling tower, and Bruticus then defeats Defensor and comes after Blaster. Blaster offers to team up with Bruticus. As a show of faith, Bruticus tells Blaster to shoot one of the humans. He shoots Sammy, and the kids cry. And while Bruticus is distracted, Blaster hits him with that fallen tower, and we find out that Sammy was once again overacting. With Bruticus defeated, the Protectobots decide to let Blaster go, and as a reward to the kids, they commandeer Blastoff, and they lock him into his space shuttle mode for a trip into outer space.
Space!
And just as they get out to space, they are attacked by the Ark. Now that takes us to issue number 36, Space Hikers. This one written by Bob Budiansky, pencils by Jose Delbo. Now, Jose Delbo, this will be the first of many issues Jose Delbo will draw for the Marvel Transformers series. He will be the regular penciler on this series for some time. Jose also did a bunch of TV tie-in books for the company Gold Key in the 1970s, The Twilight Zone, The Brady Bunch, Buck Rogers, The Monkees, the comic adaptation of the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. He also drew Doc Solar, which is one of my favorite Gold Key books. Jose Delbo also worked on DC titles in the 70s, Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane. In the 80s, he did a lot of TV tie-ins for Marvel, including Thundercats and Captain Planet. Of course, everyone's favorite #1 issue, NFL Super Pro. And of course, you can catch him on Twitter at Jose_Delbo. Now, inks on this issue by Aiken and Garvey. Letters, once again, another new person here, Diana Albers. Now, Diana Albers, a longtime Marvel letterer, worked at the Big M from 1978 to around 1995 and worked on hundreds and hundreds of books. Colors, once again, by Nell Yomtov. Edits by Don Daly. Now, the cover on this issue features Skylinks with the kids walking the plank in space.
Space!
By Frank Springer with inks by Aiken and Garvey. UK version of this book features two very different covers. Issue 143 features Blastoff about to be grabbed by a huge space claw. And that one is by Martin Griffiths, who you may remember from our coverage of the 1986 Christmas issue in the Marvel UK. Issue 144 features Grimlock jumping out of the Ark by Barry Kitson and Robin Botel. Now, in space, Skylinks is flying a few hours before the end of the last issue. He's remembering battles of 50,000 Vorns of war. Now, one Vor is equal to 83 years. So if you do the math, that is 4.15 million Earth years. Skylinks gets a call from his old friend, Wheeljack. Wheeljack requests help regarding Grimlock, who is a leader going crazy and out of control. Skylinks mentions that Wheeljack saved his hide many times. And we don't hear any more of that, but those would be some fun adventures to explore. The Ark leaves Earth's atmosphere. Grim very angry that they haven't found Blaster yet. And we cut to Blaster and the kids playing aboard Blast Off. Jose Delbo doesn't give Daisy that expressive face that we saw with Don Perlin, and it's kind of sad. But Blaster reminds Sammy not to open the airlock. The Ark fires on Blastoff, and Grimlock thinks that Blaster is teamed up with Blastoff because they've traced that mode lock, and they think that it is Blaster's mode lock on Blaster. Sammy then tosses Blaster out of the airlock as the Ark captures Blastoff. Autobots, well, they just find a bunch of kids, and Wheeljack gets the kids and Daisy some spacesuits. Grimlock then holds a trial and sentences the human children to death immediately. And we find out that Grimlock's not really that cruel. This is actually just a ruse to draw out Blaster. Grimlock plans for the kids to walk the plank in space. I won't get into the science of that, but that just doesn't seem possible. Wheeljack informs Skylinks about what's about to happen, and Skylinks rescues the kids as they fall off the Ark. The Ark then chases Skylinks. The Dinobots chase him through an asteroid field. The Dinobots surround him and wait because the kids are running out of air. Did I say Grimlock wasn't that cruel? Because now he's suffocating children. He is that cruel. Blaster boards the Ark, and the Autobots are happy to see him. And Blaster then surrenders to the Dinobots to save the children. And that is where we're going to leave off our Marvel US coverage for this episode of Transformers University. Now, you know, in retrospect, and I've read these issues a whole bunch of times, these are actually, despite the wonky covers, despite the inclusion of the children, which generally is one of those things that will turn me off to a book, these stories are actually really good and pretty fun. The Throttlebots in the Marvel comics are fantastic, and Blaster is got such a huge, great role, and his rivalry with Grimlock is explored here and will be explored even more later on. And this is definitely one of the key pieces of the Marvel run. It is kind of weird with the Man of Iron story just kind of being dropped in the middle, but when you look back at the history, it is interesting. And if you don't know that much about Jim Shooter, go all the way back to episode number 2 of this show. I sat down with Jim Shooter at New York Comic Con a number of years back, and he was fantastic. He was great to talk to. He was super interesting. It's a guy who has been in the comics industry since he was like 13 years old. So please go back and check out that episode. Now, for more on how you can catch up with me, give this a quick listen.
Thanks for listening to the show. Stick around to hear what's coming up next episode, but first, I want to fill you in on a few ways you can stay in touch with the show. Want to be on the show? Leave us a voicemail at 702-763-4838. That's 702-POD-4TFU. Or send an email to info@TFU.info. Be sure to catch us on Twitter at TFU_info and on Facebook and Instagram under the username TFU.INFO, all one word. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TFU.INFO, where we post all of our podcasts plus special video segments, reviews, and live coverage of Transformers-related events such as New York Toy Fair and New York Comic Con. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please visit us at www.tfu.info, the world's longest-running transforming toy archive.
Now that'll wrap up this episode of Transformers University. And don't worry, the next episode is coming right after this one, real soon, because I've already done all the research for it and I'm excited to record it. I'm not going to record it right this minute, but I am going to record it, I'd say, within the next 24 hours. So next time on Transformers University, we are going back by the numbers. If you haven't checked out our By the Numbers episodes, go back and give them a listen. We're going to go break down the toy tech specs for the Autobots and Decepticons from 1987. We're going to take a look at all of their tech spec numbers, their functions, how they fit into the Autobot and Decepticon armies, and break it all down based off of their tech spec numbers. It's going to be so much fun. Every time I do one of these episodes, I get a lot of great feedback from folks. So please make sure you check it out. Episode 97, Transformers University, coming up. Also got another TFU News and Views ready to go, written out, and plan on doing that one real soon, dropping that one also. So thank you so much for coming back and checking out the show and sticking with me through the break. I love you all. I love all of our Patreon supporters. I love everyone who writes to me and reaches out on Twitter. Got so much great content planned, so much more new stuff. Hopefully some stuff for the YouTube channel once I get a few things sorted out. I am so excited to share all of this with you. 2021 is a great time to be a Transformers fan. We'll talk about that as well. But until next time, I am your host, Anthony Bricali, owner, operator, madman behind TFU.info. Till then, see ya.